I came to Thailand because Australian healthcare was killing me slowly, with waiting lists and red tape. I thought I'd found paradise, affordable treatment, warm smiles, English-speaking doctors who actually listened. Then the cancer came back, and I learned that paradise has a price tag that changes when you're too sick to leave. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was submitted by one of our community members who wanted others to know what really happens when you get seriously ill as an expat in Thailand. Not the horror stories, but the slow financial suffocation nobody warns you about. I sit in my studio apartment in Chiang Mai, looking at the hospital invoice on my phone, and the number doesn't make sense at first. 4,000 American dollars for 1 month. 1 month of treatment that was costing me $800 just 6 months ago. I'm Lachlan, 62 years old, and I moved here from Perth 3 years back thinking I'd beaten the system. In Australia, I was waiting 9 months for a specialist appointment, paying $200 every time I needed to see my GP, watching my retirement fund drain into a healthcare system that treated me like a number. My mate Trevor had moved to Chiang Mai 2 years before me, kept sending photos of himself at cafes, getting dental work done for a fraction of Perth prices, bragging about his annual checkups that cost less than a tank of petrol back home. When my prostate issues started getting serious, and the Australian public system told me I'd wait another 6 months for an MRI, I made the call, sold my unit in Belmont, packed 2 suitcases, got my retirement visa sorted in 3 weeks. Thailand wasn't just cheaper, it was better organized. The private hospitals looked like 5-star hotels. The doctors spoke perfect English, trained in Australia or America, and they actually spent time with you. That first year I felt like I'd discovered a secret. Quarterly checkups cost me 1,200 baht, about 50 Australian dollars. My blood pressure medication was a third of the price. Even my colonoscopy, which would have cost me 2 grand out of pocket in Perth, ran me 18,000 baht, less than 800 Australian. I was living in a nice 1-bedroom place for $400 a month, eating out twice a day, getting massages weekly, and still spending less than my mortgage and utilities cost back home. Trevor and I would meet at this Irish pub on Nimmonheeman Road every Friday, and we'd laugh about how we'd cracked the code, how all those people back in Australia were suckers paying taxes for a system that didn't work. The headaches started in February, just after Songkran. I ignored them at first because everyone gets headaches, but by March they were waking me up at 3 in the morning, this pressure behind my eyes like someone was inflating a balloon inside my skull. I went to my regular clinic, the small one I used for prescriptions, and the doctor there, a younger Thai guy who always seemed rushed, told me it was probably stress or dehydration. "Take these," he said, handing me a prescription. "Drink more water. Come back if it doesn't improve in 2 weeks." I took the pills. Drank more water. 2 weeks later, I couldn't read my phone screen without the words blurring together. That's when I went to Rajavej Hospital, one of the big private places that caters to expats and medical tourists. The neurologist, Dr. Somphong, didn't waste time. He looked at my eyes with his little light, asked me 10 questions about my symptoms, and had me scheduled for an MRI within 2 days. "We need to see what's causing this pressure," he said. "It could be many things, but we shouldn't wait." In Australia, that MRI would have taken months through the public system. Here I was in and out in an hour, cost me 9,000 baht, about 360 Australian dollars. I remember thinking even then, even scared about what they might find, that this was still cheaper and faster than home. Dr. Somphong called me back 4 days later. "Mr. Lachlan, please sit down," he said, and I knew from his voice it wasn't good news. "We found a mass, a tumor in your frontal lobe, brain tumor. Benign," he said, which should have been good news, but it was pressing on my optic nerve and parts of my frontal lobe. It needed to come out. He explained everything in clear English, showed me the scans on his computer, drew diagrams. "The surgery would cost approximately 450,000 baht, he said. "Maybe 18,000 Australian dollars, including 3 days in hospital and all follow-up appointments for 3 months. Back in Perth, that same surgery would have cost me 40,000 out of pocket if I went private. Or I'd wait maybe a year through public with no guarantees." I called Trevor that night, my hands shaking as I held my beer. "Mate, they want to cut into my brain," I told him. He leaned back in his chair, took a long drink. I know a guy, another Aussie, had heart surgery here last year, paid a fraction of what it costs back home, recovered beautifully. You're in the right place, Lachlan. Trust me, I made the decision right there. I'd pay the 18,000 from my savings, get it done properly and still come out ahead. I scheduled the surgery for May 15th. I had 73,000 Australian dollars in my retirement account. I thought that was plenty. The surgery went well, they told me. 6 hours under, 3 days in a private room with a view of the city. Nurses checking on me every 2 hours. Dr. Somfong visited twice a day, always smiling, always reassuring. The tumor is out, clean margins, no complications, he said on the 3rd day. You'll need to come back for checkups every month for 6 months, then every 3 months after that. But you should make a full recovery. When they discharged me, I felt weak but hopeful, like I'd dodged something terrible. The bill came to 520,000 baht, about 21,000 Australian dollars, higher than the estimate because of some extra monitoring they'd done during surgery. I paid it from my Australian account, watched that number drop but told myself it was still cheaper than home. Still a win. The first follow-up appointment was 2 weeks later. Dr. Somfong examined me, shone his light in my eyes again, checked my reflexes. Everything looks good, he said, but I want you on a medication to prevent swelling and seizures while your brain heals. It's very important you take this exactly as prescribed. The medication was called something I couldn't pronounce, and it cost 11,000 baht for a month's supply, about 440 Australian. I remember standing in the hospital pharmacy, thinking that seemed steep. But the pharmacist, a woman named Sumali with perfect makeup and a warm smile, explained it was an imported drug, very effective, very important for my recovery. This medication, it keeps your brain stable while the tissue heals, she said, her English perfect and confident. Many patients take it for 6 months, sometimes longer, but it's essential. She spoke with such certainty, such care, that I trusted the process without question. I paid. Every month I came back for checkups, and every month the routine was the same. 20-minute appointment with Dr. Somfong, blood tests, the same prescription, another 11,000 baht at the pharmacy, where Sumali would print my receipt and remind me about the importance of taking it exactly as prescribed. You're doing so well, Mr. Lachlan, she'd say. Your recovery is excellent. Just stay on the medication. By September, 4 months after surgery, I'd spent another 17,000 Australian on medication and appointments. My savings account sat at around 50,000. Still comfortable, I told myself, still ahead of where I'd be in Australia. Trevor had stopped meeting me as often at the pub. He'd found a girlfriend, some younger Thai woman from Lampang, and was spending all his time with her family. You should meet someone too, mate, he told me once. Life's better here when you've got someone. But I wasn't interested in that. I just wanted to stay healthy and live quietly. November brought the headaches back, different this time, sharper, concentrated on the left side where they'd operated. I went straight to Rajavaj, no appointments with the small clinic, because I was scared. Dr. Somfong ordered another MRI, and I waited 3 days for results that felt like 3 months. When he finally called me into his office, his face had changed, more serious, less of the easy confidence. Mr. Lachlan, I need to be honest with you, he said, pulling up my scans on his computer. The tumor has returned, or rather, what we thought was scar tissue during surgery was actually residual tumor cells. The growth is aggressive. I felt the room tilt slightly. What does that mean? I asked. It means you need radiation therapy, 30 sessions over 6 weeks, followed by a stronger medication protocol. This is very treatable, but we need to act quickly. He walked me through the costs, and that's when my chest started to tighten. Radiation was 65,000 baht per session, about 2,600 Australian, 30 sessions. I did the math in my head and felt my chest go tight. That was 78,000 Australian dollars, more than I had left in total. Dr. Somfong must have seen my face change, because he quickly added, "We have payment plans. The hospital works with medical loan companies. Many expats manage this successfully." He stood up and opened his office door. "Let me introduce you to our patient financial coordinator. She can help you understand your options." He introduced me to Sumali, the same pharmacist I'd been seeing, except now she had a different title on her name tag. Patient Financial Coordinator. She sat me down in a small office near the billing department, offered me tea and pulled out a folder. "Mr. Lachlan, I want you to know that financial concerns shouldn't stop you from getting the treatment you need," she said, her voice warm and professional. "The hospital partners with 3 medical finance companies, all of them Thai banks that specialize in healthcare loans for foreigners. The interest rates ranged from 8 to 12% annually," she explained, "and I'd need to show proof of income, proof of funds, and a guarantor if possible. I had my retirement visa, but that was based on showing I had the equivalent of about 24,000 Australian in a Thai bank account, which I did, barely, only because I'd transferred money 2 months before. You could likely qualify for 40,000 Australian worth of financing if you maintain that balance," she said, tapping numbers into her calculator. "The first radiation session is scheduled for next Monday. We'll need a 50% deposit up front to secure your spot." I transferred 19,000 Australian from my account that afternoon, leaving me with roughly 13,000 total across both countries. I walked back to my apartment in the dark, the streets full of tourists on scooters, vendors selling pad thai, and I felt like I was watching my own life from outside my body. Radiation therapy is nothing like surgery. Surgery, you go under, you wake up, it's done. Radiation is repetitive, grinding. Every weekday for 6 weeks I took a songtheo to the hospital, checked in at the desk, waited in the same beige waiting room with the same CNN International playing on the TV, got called back to the same machine. The actual treatment took maybe 15 minutes, lying still while this enormous device rotated around my head, making clicking sounds like a camera shutter. Then I'd go home, exhausted, nauseous, my scalp burning where the beams had focused. They gave me cream for the burns, another prescription, another 2,000 baht. By the 3rd week I'd lost most of my appetite. By the 5th week I'd lost 8 kilograms and stopped going out except for treatment. Sumali checked on me every week when I came in for my sessions, always asking how I was feeling, if the payment plan was working, if I needed to adjust anything. "You're being so brave, Mr. Lachlan," she'd say, touching my arm gently. "I know this is difficult, but you're doing everything right." She was kind, genuinely seemed to care, and I appreciated it because Dr. Somphong had become harder to reach, always busy with other patients. One afternoon in December, after my 23rd session, Sumali asked if I'd considered medical insurance. "I looked into it before coming to Thailand," I told her, my voice tired. "But at 62, with a pre-existing condition, I was quoted nearly 8,000 Australian annually. And that was before the tumor." She nodded sympathetically, made a note on her tablet. "Many expats face the same problem, but there is something you might be interested in. The hospital has started a membership plan, a newer program where you pay a monthly fee and get discounts on future treatments, priority scheduling, things like that." I asked her what it cost. 12,000 baht a month, around 480 Australian, but it could save you up to 30% on medications and procedures. It might be worth considering, given your ongoing treatment needs. I was too tired to think about it clearly, so I told her I'd consider it after I finished radiation. She smiled, patted my hand. "Of course. Just know the option is there. I'll follow up with you when you're feeling better." The gesture felt maternal, comforting. I didn't realize then that she worked on commission. I finished radiation in mid-January. Dr. Somphong ordered another MRI, and this one showed the tumor had stopped growing, which he called a success. "This is very good news, Mr. Lachlan," he said, his confidence returning. "But you'll need to stay on a new medication indefinitely, something stronger than what you've been taking, to prevent recurrence." This drug was called temozolomide, an oral chemotherapy, and it cost 92,000 baht per month, roughly 3,700 Australian dollars. I stared at Sumali across her desk when she told me the price, sure I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, did you say 92,000? For 1 month?" She nodded patiently, her expression sympathetic. "It's an imported medication, patented, no generic available in Thailand yet. It's considered the gold standard for preventing glioblastoma recurrence." I leaned forward. "But I don't have glioblastoma. Dr. Somphong said I had a benign tumor." She nodded again. The pathology after radiation showed some cells had characteristics that require this level of treatment. Dr. Somphong can explain the medical details better than I can, but this is his recommendation for your case. I went back to his office, waited 40 minutes because he was in surgery, and when he finally sat down with me, he looked exhausted. He confirmed what Sumali had said, used words like atypical cells and aggressive preventive approach, and standard of care internationally. What about alternatives? I asked. Cheaper options? Maybe generic versions from India? He folded his hands on his desk. I could prescribe something less effective for about 20,000 baht monthly, but I strongly recommend against it, given your case. The risk of recurrence is too high. This medication gives you the best chance. I left that appointment and sat in the hospital cafe for an hour, drinking terrible coffee, running numbers in my head. 92,000 baht monthly was 3,700 Australian. I had maybe 11,000 Australian left across my accounts. I could afford 3 months if I spent nothing else. No rent, no food, nothing. I called my daughter in Perth that night. Emma's 40 years old, married, 2 kids, works as a teacher. I hadn't told her how bad the money situation was, didn't want to worry her. "Dad, how's the recovery going?" she asked, her voice bright. I kept it vague. "It's going okay, love. Treatment's just more expensive than I expected. Do you know anyone who might be able to help me understand my options, like financially?" There was a pause. "Dad, are you okay? Are you running out of money?" She offered to lend me money, which made me feel like a failure. I'm her father. I'm supposed to help her, not the other way around. No, I'll figure it out," I told her. "I just wanted to ask. Don't worry about me." I hung up before she could hear my voice crack. The next morning I went back to Rajavej and signed paperwork for an extension on my medical loan, another 20,000 Australian, at 11% interest. Sumali processed it with her usual warm efficiency, printing forms and explaining payment schedules. "I'm so glad you're taking your health seriously, Mr. Lachlan," she said. "Money can always be earned back, but health can't." February brought a new problem. My retirement visa was up for renewal, and one of the requirements was maintaining 800,000 baht in a Thai bank account, roughly 32,000 Australian. I had maybe 700,000 if I scraped everything together, and that included money I needed for next month's medication. I went to immigration in Promenade Mall, explained my situation to an officer who barely looked up from his phone. "Rules are rules," he said in broken English. "You need 800,000 baht. Or you can apply for extension based on medical grounds. Need letter from hospital, proof of ongoing treatment, 15,000 baht in fees, and proof you can support yourself." I got the letter from Rajavej, paid the immigration fees, and somehow got approved for another year. But the officer warned me that next year they'd scrutinize my finances more carefully. Walking out of immigration, I felt like a criminal who'd gotten away with something. That same week, Sumali called me directly, not through the hospital, on my personal phone. "Mr. Lachlan, it's Sumali from Rajavej. I hope you don't mind me calling you directly. I noticed you're struggling with the medication costs and wanted to talk about the membership plan again, more seriously this time." I told her I remembered she'd mentioned it. "Would it be possible for me to come to your apartment to discuss it?" she asked. "I have some materials that would be easier to explain in person. It would only take 30 minutes. Something about that felt off, a hospital coordinator making house calls, but I was lonely and tired, and she'd been nothing but kind to me, so I said yes. She arrived on a Saturday afternoon with a folder full of glossy brochures, wearing jeans and a nice blouse, looking more like a friend than a hospital employee. She explained the membership plan in detail, sitting at my small table, pulling out charts and calculations. "For 12,000 baht monthly, you get guaranteed availability of medications at cost, no markup, priority access to specialists, private room guarantee if you ever need hospitalization again." She showed me calculations on her tablet, how much I'd save over 6 months, a year. The numbers looked good, almost too good. "Why would the hospital offer this if they lose money on medication sales?" I asked. She smiled, the same warm smile she always had. "It's a new initiative to build patient loyalty. They make money on volume and consistency. Think of it like a gym membership. The hospital benefits from having committed long-term patients. I signed up that afternoon, paid the first month with my credit card, which I'd been avoiding using because the cash advance fees from Australia were brutal. She hugged me when she left, a quick, friendly embrace. "You've made a smart decision, Mr. Lachlan. You're taking control of your health." March arrived and I went to collect my first month of temozolomide under the new membership plan. The pharmacy had my prescription ready, but when I asked for the membership discount, the pharmacist, a different woman this time, looked confused. She checked her computer, made a phone call, then told me the membership plan didn't apply to medications purchased through external suppliers, only medications the hospital stocked directly. Temozolomide comes from our specialty oncology pharmacy, a separate department. You still pay the full price, 92,000 baht. I asked to speak to Sumali. The pharmacist said she was off today, would be back Monday. I stood there in the pharmacy corridor feeling stupid, manipulated, trying to understand what I'd actually signed up for. When I finally reached Sumali on Monday, she apologized profusely. "Mr. Lachlan, I'm so sorry. There must have been a miscommunication. The plan primarily covers generic medications and diagnostic tests. Specialty oncology drugs have different procurement structures. I should have been more clear." She offered to refund my membership fee for the first month, which made me feel slightly better, but I was still out the 92,000 baht for medication. I didn't cancel the membership, though, because she convinced me it would still save me money on blood tests and scans. "You'll see the savings over time," she said. "And you still get priority scheduling, which is valuable." And because cancelling felt like admitting I'd been foolish to trust her, my loan payment started that month too. 600 Australian every month for 3 years at 11% interest. Between the medication, the membership fee, my rent, food and utilities, I was spending about 4,700 American dollars monthly, roughly 7,000 Australian. My retirement pension was 2,200 Australian monthly. I was running negative by almost 5,000 Australian every month, draining what little I had left. I stopped going to the Irish pub entirely, stopped eating out except for street food, started buying the cheapest vegetables from the market, cooking one-pot meals that lasted 3 days. I lost more weight, not from the tumor or treatment anymore, but from poverty. Trevor messaged me once asking if I was okay, said he hadn't seen me around. "Just busy, mate. Everything's fine," I replied. I didn't want him to know I was drowning. By April, I'd spent down to 3,000 Australian in my accounts. I made an appointment with Dr. Somfong, not for a checkup, but to beg for alternatives. I sat across from him and explained everything. The financial situation, the loan, the medication costs I couldn't sustain. "Is there any way to reduce the dosage? Switch to something cheaper, anything that would keep me alive without bankrupting me completely." He listened with his hands folded on his desk, his expression neutral, professional. "Mr. Lachlan, I understand your situation. Many foreign patients face similar challenges. I could reduce your temozolomide dosage by half, which would bring the cost down to about 46,000 baht monthly. But I want you to understand that this significantly increases your recurrence risk." He paused. "Let that sink in. I recommend you stay on the full dose for at least 6 months, then we reassess." 6 months? I didn't have 6 months of money. I had maybe 6 weeks. "What about going back to Australia?" I asked. "Transferring my care to the public system there?" He nodded slowly. "That's certainly an option. But you should know that if the tumor recurs while you're waiting for treatment in Australia, emergency intervention would be complicated. The cost there could be even higher depending on how quickly you can get into the public system. And the waiting lists, as you know, can be very long." He was right. I knew he was right, because I'd left Australia precisely because I couldn't afford to be sick there either. I was trapped in a situation where I couldn't afford to stay and couldn't afford to leave. "I'll take the reduced dosage," I said finally. Somali processed the new prescription with her usual cheerful efficiency, her face sympathetic. "You're making a brave choice, Mr. Lachlan. Staying positive is half the battle." I wanted to scream at her that positivity didn't pay for medication, but I didn't because she was just doing her job, and because I'd signed every paper they'd put in front of me without reading carefully enough. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights and tried to calculate exactly when I'd run out of money completely. If I stopped paying rent and moved into a cheaper place, maybe a room in a guest house for 3,000 baht instead of my 12,000 baht apartment, I could stretch things another 2 months. If I stopped eating anything except rice and eggs, maybe another 2 weeks. If I defaulted on my loan, they'd come after whatever assets I had, which wasn't much, but they could maybe freeze my Thai bank account. I opened my laptop and searched Australian citizens dying in Thailand and found more stories than I expected. The headaches came back in June, worse than before. I knew immediately what it meant, but I waited a week before going back to Rajavej because I couldn't face what they'd tell me. When I finally went in, Dr. Somphong ordered an MRI, and I didn't even ask about the cost, just let them do it. Another 9,000 baht on my credit card that was already maxed out at 6,300 Australian dollars. The scan showed new growth, faster than he'd expected even with the reduced medication. "Mr. Lachlan, we need to be aggressive now," he said, his voice firm. "I recommend immediate surgery again, followed by a more aggressive radiation protocol, and a switch to a combination of medications that would cost approximately 130,000 baht monthly. That's over 5,000 American dollars. I sat in his office and felt something break inside me, not emotionally but practically, like a machine that just stops working. "I can't do it," I told him. "I'm out of money. I've already borrowed more than I can ever pay back." He nodded slowly, his expression carefully neutral. "Do you have family who could help?" I thought about Emma, her teacher salary, her mortgage, her kids who needed braces and school fees. No. He suggested I contact the Australian Embassy. They have resources for citizens in medical distress abroad. They might be able to facilitate your return to Australia or connect you with charitable organizations. The word charitable hit me like a slap. I'd worked 42 years, paid taxes, raised a daughter, owned property, and now I was a charity case in a country I'd come to because I thought I was being smart. Somali caught me in the hallway as I was leaving, her hand on my arm. "Mr. Lachlan, wait. Do you want to discuss payment options for the surgery?" I looked at her and felt a surge of anger I couldn't control. "I'm done," I said. "I can't afford any more treatment." "I can't afford anything." She looked genuinely sad, her eyes soft. "I understand. I'm so sorry. I'll pray for you." I walked out of that hospital knowing I'd never go back. I went home and slept for 16 hours, and when I woke up the headache was so bad I vomited into my bathroom sink. I cleaned it up, took 4 ibuprofen, and opened my laptop to research palliative care options in Thailand for foreigners with no money. I called the Australian Embassy in Bangkok the next morning, got transferred 4 times, finally spoke to someone in the consular section who asked me a series of questions about my situation. She was polite but matter-of-fact, her voice crisp and professional. "I'm sorry to hear about your situation, Mr. Lachlan. The embassy can't pay for medical treatment, but we can provide a list of hospitals and charitable organizations. We can also facilitate contact with your family if needed." I explained I didn't want to involve my family, that I was trying to understand my options for palliative care or medical repatriation. She put me on hold for 8 minutes, came back and said medical repatriation required either private insurance, which I didn't have, or family sponsorship. Someone in Australia would need to pay for a medical escort and flight, roughly 20 to 30,000 Australian dollars. For palliative care in Thailand, she gave me the names of 3 organizations, 2 of them Buddhist hospices that primarily served Thai nationals but sometimes accepted foreigners, and 1 Christian mission in Chiang Rai that offered end-of-life care on a donation basis. I wrote down the names and numbers, thanked her, hung up feeling more lost than before. I called the first hospice, spoke to a woman who barely spoke English. Through broken conversation, I gathered that they had no current beds available and primarily served Thai patients with family support. The second one didn't answer. The third, the Christian mission, connected me to an American nurse named Patricia, who asked me detailed questions about my diagnosis, prognosis, and financial situation. She was kind, patient, and honest. "We have space," she said finally. "But you'd need to get yourself to Chiang Rai, about 3 hours from Chiang Mai, and you'd need to contribute what you can toward care, even if that's nothing. We operate on donations and faith." I asked what the facilities were like. "Basic but clean. We provide pain management and spiritual support. It's not a hospital, Mr. Lachlan. It's a place where people come when they're ready to let go, when they need comfort more than treatment. I told her I'd think about it. That night I counted everything I had left. About 2,000 Australian in my bank accounts, another 1,000 on my credit card before I hit the absolute limit, and maybe 300 Australian worth of Thai baht in cash in my apartment. 2,800 Australian dollars total. I thought about Emma again, wondered if I should call her, tell her everything, ask her to help me come home. But home to what? I didn't have a home in Australia anymore. No apartment, no space. Just a daughter with her own life. I called Emma on a Friday afternoon, which was Friday night in Perth. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear her kids in the background laughing about something. "Dad, how are you?" she asked, her voice warm. "Tell me you're doing better." I told her the truth, all of it, the recurrence, the money, the debt, the fact that I'd run out of options. She went quiet for a long time, and when she finally spoke, her voice was tight. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you let it get this bad?" I didn't have a good answer, except that I didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to admit I'd failed at the whole expat retirement dream I'd been so confident about. "I thought I could handle it," I said. "I thought the system here would keep working." She said she and her husband would figure something out. "We can maybe borrow against the house, get you home, get you into the public system in Perth. There has to be something we can do." I told her no, that I wouldn't let her do that, risk her family's stability for me. She started crying then, her voice breaking. "What do you expect me to do? Just let you die alone in Thailand?" I told her I wasn't planning to die alone, that there was a hospice, that I'd be cared for. "Have you given up?" she asked. "Are you just quitting?" That word, quitting, made me angry. I'm not quitting. I'm facing reality. I've spent everything I have trying to survive, and there's nothing left to spend. I can't keep borrowing money I'll never pay back. I can't keep destroying myself financially for a few more months. She said she'd call me back, that she needed to talk to her husband. We hung up, and I sat in the dark of my apartment listening to the sounds of the city outside, motorbikes and music and people living their lives. She called back 3 hours later with a plan. "We can send you 1,500 Australian immediately, enough to keep you stable for another month, and we'll figure out the rest from there. Maybe set up a GoFundMe. Reach out to old friends from Perth. Something." I told her I'd think about it, which we both knew meant no. I couldn't take her money. Couldn't watch her drain her savings the same way I'd drained mine. The next morning I called Patricia at the mission in Chiang Rai and told her I'd like to come up, see the place, understand what end-of-life care there looked like. I took a bus to Chiang Rai on a Tuesday morning in July. Cost me 240 baht, about $9 Australian. Everything I owned fit into one backpack and a small rolling suitcase. I'd paid my landlord for the final month, apologized for leaving early, lost my deposit. The bus ride took 4 hours through mountains and small villages, and I spent most of it with my head against the window, watching Thailand pass by. It was beautiful country, green and lush, nothing like the desperate financial nightmare it had become for me. The mission was on the outskirts of Chiang Rai, down a dirt road, a collection of simple wooden buildings surrounded by gardens. Patricia met me at the entrance, a woman in her 50s with grey hair and tired eyes that had seen too much suffering. "You must be Lachlan," she said, shaking my hand. "Welcome. Let me show you around." She walked me through the grounds, a common area with plastic chairs and a TV, a small chapel, a medication room, and 4 long buildings with rooms that each held 2 beds. My room was clean, sparse, a bed with mosquito netting, a small table, a shared bathroom down the hall. My roommate was a Thai man in his 70s dying of liver failure, unconscious most of the time. Patricia explained the routine. Meals at 7, noon and 6. Medication as needed. Prayer services are optional but encouraged. A doctor visits once weekly. I asked about the pain management. "We have morphine, basic palliative care, whatever's needed to keep people comfortable," she said. "That's what we do here. We keep people comfortable." I asked about the cost. She looked at me directly. "There is no cost, Lachlan. Just contribution if you can, whatever you can. Some people give $100 a month. Some give nothing. Some families donate in memory. It's all the same to us." I gave her 300 Australian that afternoon, half of what I had in cash because I needed to give something, needed to feel like less of a burden. She took it with a small smile. Thank you. You're welcome here as long as you need. That night I lay in my bed listening to my roommate breathe in shallow, wet sounds and thought about all the decisions that had brought me here. Coming to Thailand, trusting that healthcare would stay affordable, not buying insurance, not telling Emma sooner. Every choice had seemed reasonable at the time, smart even. Now they felt like a trail of failures leading to a room in a hospice where I'd die surrounded by strangers. I've been at the mission for 6 weeks now. The headaches are constant but manageable with the medication they give me. I'm weaker, sleep most of the day, and when I'm awake I sit in the garden watching the volunteers work. Local Thai people and a few Western retirees who come to help. Patricia checks on me twice daily, asks how I'm feeling, if I need anything. There's a kindness here that I didn't find in the gleaming private hospital, with its 5-star lobby and its patient coordinators on commission. Emma calls once a week, still trying to convince me to come home, still offering money I won't take. "Dad, please," she said last week. "We can make it work. Just come home." I tell her I'm comfortable, that I'm at peace, which is partially true. I'm not at peace exactly, but I'm resigned, and maybe that's close enough. Last week a new patient arrived, an English guy named Colin, 70 years old, lung cancer. Same story as mine, different details. Came to Thailand for cheap dental work and retirement, he told me, sitting in the garden. Got sick, ran out of money, ended up here. We sit together sometimes in the afternoons, comparing notes on how we ended up in this place, and there's a bitter humor to it. 2 old men who thought they'd outsmarted the system, only to discover the system has no mercy for people who get seriously ill without serious money. He asked me if I regret coming to Thailand. I told him I don't know. That regret feels like a luxury I can't afford anymore, that I'm just trying to get through each day without too much pain. What I do know is this: the fantasy of affordable healthcare in Southeast Asia is real until you get really sick, and then it becomes a trap that closes slowly around you. The costs don't skyrocket because the hospitals are evil. They skyrocket because you're using real medicine that costs real money. And when you're foreign, when you have no insurance, when you have no family nearby, you become a cash patient in a system designed to extract maximum value from medical tourism. I thought I was escaping Australia's broken healthcare system, but I was really just trading one set of impossible choices for another. At least in Australia I'd have died near my daughter, maybe in a public hospital bed waiting for treatment, but surrounded by people who spoke my language and knew my history. Here I'm dying in a mission hospice in northern Thailand, comfortable enough, cared for by genuine people, but fundamentally alone in a country I never really understood. The tumor is growing, I can feel it. The way the headaches have changed, the way I lose words sometimes mid-sentence. Patricia says I probably have a few months, maybe less. I've made peace with that timeline. I just wish I'd made different choices that would have let me die somewhere that felt like home.